across Ontario as of this morning, and those numbers are changing rapidly. And of those, 81 are considered not under control, 88 are being observed, 11 are being held, and 11 are under control. There are 10 communities that have already been evacuated or have evacuations underway, and 4 more communities are under warning or preparing for possible evacuations. Evacuees are being hosted in Thunder Bay, Cornora, Fort Frances, Lac Seul, Sioux Lookout, Sudbury, Red Lake, Niagara Falls, and Toronto. I want to thank each of these communities and all the organizations who are assisting in this process for the compassion they've shown in stepping up to support their fellow Ontarians in their time of need. To support these communities, our government is working collaboratively across ministries and with a range of external partners to establish supports for people evacuating. This includes transportation, accommodation, food, and registration services. We're also providing support with air purifiers and air scrubbers to help communities remain in place. My message to all those who've been forced to evacuate is very simple. Our government stands with you and will always have your backs. As of this morning, more than 150 fire crews are on the ground. And in the last few days, the number of water bombers and helicopters deployed and operating has risen to over 80. And an additional 39 aircraft are ready to be deployed to the highest needs area. I want to acknowledge the incredible support we're already receiving from the governments of Alberta and the Yukon, who have crews on the ground in Ontario right now supporting our efforts. On Wednesday, we also requested that the federal government, including the Canadian Armed Forces, be prepared to rapidly deploy federal resources to support the evacuations taking place now and any that may become necessary. Yesterday, we received confirmation from the Federal Minister of Emergency Management that the federal government is ready to support as necessary. I want to thank the Canadian Armed Forces and the OPP for their heroic work to date, including their involvement in a search and rescue of campers trapped near wildfires in Northern Ontario. Ontario Corps is also ready to deploy, and we have reached out to impacted municipalities to see where it can be most effective. For real-time updates on the most recent status of fires and evacuation notices, you can visit ontario.ca/forest fires or call 211, who have added more frontline capacity so they can respond to non-urgent calls 24 hours a day in more than 150 languages and provide up-to-date information to help impacted Ontarians. I want to reiterate, my tongue's getting tied here, reiterate that our government will not spare a single penny to protect communities and keep people safe. Since 2018, we've spent nearly $1.5 billion on wildland firefighting, more than doubling annual base funding from $70 million when we took office to $150 million today. That base funding ensures that firefighters, aircraft, and equipment are in place before fire season begins. But that isn't where the funding ends. Firefighting is based on need, so while the base budget is $150 million, every year we spend significantly more than that. For instance, last year the base budget was $135 million, but the actual spending was more than double that at $271 million. What I find despicable and disgusting, that opposition would politicize the amount of money being spent and going out there and putting false information out. And it's inaccurate, it's untruthful. In a time of a crisis, all levels of government need to come together, no matter if you're opposition or not. But to go out there and try to scare people and put out blatant lies about the amount is spent is absolutely disgusting on their behalf. Ahead of this fire season, we added 68 new permanent positions on top of the 100 positions we added last year. We increased compensation for wildland firefighters, pilots, aircraft maintenance, engineers, and other critical frontline staff, so we can continue to recruit and retain the dedicated professionals we need to keep Ontario safe. We're also strengthening our fleet of firefighting aircraft by investing $650 million, which is the largest purchase in Ontario and Canadian history, to purchase 5 new helicopters and 6 new water bombers. We will not put a price on the safety of our communities, and I mean it when I say that we will spare no expense. I'll repeat that, spare no expense, like we have year after year after year. Once again, I want to thank the brave men and women who are working around the clock to fight these fires and protect our northern communities. And I want to assure them that we will have their backs no matter what. Thank you, and may God bless the people of Ontario.
We will now take questions from the media. Media can come to the microphone and state their name and outlet. Just a reminder, the format is 1 question and 1 follow-up. First question.
Hi, Lane Harrison, CBC News. I just have one for you, Premier, about the communities in the north. There's been some criticism from the Indigenous communities that have had to evacuate of your Ministry of Natural Resources, with White Sand First Nation saying in particular that the Ministry of Natural Resources didn't see the fire that raged through Collins until it was too late, and there's been some frustration about the evacuation process as well. Just what do you have to say to those communities who are frustrated with the response?
Well, before I pass it over to the minister, we are throwing every single resource we can. When you have 191 infernos running right across our province, we're deploying it based on the firefighters' expertise. We aren't the experts, they're the experts. And if they find there's one area that's burning out of control for one reason or another, we're going to listen to them. We don't direct our police, we don't direct our firefighters. We're there to support them any which way we can. I've talked to a number of chiefs and telling them that we're there to support them. But what's a miracle that no one's lost their lives? Because the incredible work our frontline firefighters, OPP, paramedics do an incredible job, our Canadian Armed Forces, no one has lost their lives, and thank God. I'll pass it over to the minister.
Well, thanks very much, Premier. In regards to what's happened over the last 72 hours, it's obviously been very difficult. When we're looking at these fires specifically, how they started, how they spawned, and just sort of looking at Collins just to sort of directly address your question. That particular fire started very, very close to community, which is something unusual, and we didn't really have a whole lot of lead time to be able to then get crews over there from the other fires that they were already fighting. I think at the time we had roughly 180 fires on the go. So we worked with the community, obviously, to advise them, of course, and they were able to evacuate and get out, which is obviously number one. That is our number one priority. And we're going to continue to work with them over the next little while in regards to kind of how things are going to flow. And obviously, we've got them safe now in Thunder Bay, which is incredible. And thank you to Minister Dunlop and her team for the work they're doing now to keep those people housed on the ground. So certainly a very tricky situation. We're working with First Nations partners all across the province, constant communication on a daily basis. Not just obviously First Nations, but also unorganized townships and municipalities as we deal with a pretty troubled time.
Hi, Premier. Alyssa Mendez with the Canadian Press. It seems like most, if not all, of the First Nations communities that have been evacuated have been under self-evacuation orders. Why have those not come from the provincial government, and what are the criteria for ordering wildfire evacuations?
Mike, do you want to take that one, or?
Yeah. So when we move forward with evacuations, there's a few different ways that it works. Communities, of course, are more than welcome to self-evacuate if it makes sense for them. Often, usually what will happen first is they try to get vulnerable people out of communities. So folks with health issues, seniors, mobility issues, they're generally the folks that we try and get out first. So there's a couple of different ways that happens. They can either self-evacuate. They can work with the Ministry of Natural Resources and, of course, with the Ministry of Emergency Preparedness and Response. There's also federal government implications as well as we move forward with those evacuations. So those are sort of the order of operations. Once we know that fire is getting close to a community, we will, depending on where they are, sometimes the OPP will put an evacuation order in place. Sometimes the Ministry of Natural Resources provincially will put an evacuation order in place. And at that point, of course, we would work with community to be able to either evacuate them using planes. We have some Dash 8 planes that are available to land on smaller airstrips across the province. And then we also do have a contracted Boeing 737 that's able to move larger amounts of people should we need to do that. Through Minister Dunlop as well, we now have the ability to leverage the Canadian Armed Forces, which is wonderful to have. And I don't know, Minister, if maybe you want to come up and just explain a little bit about how that relationship with the Canadian Forces works from this point forward now that we've signed that agreement.
Well, thank you, Minister. I also want to touch on the evacuations, considering we're here at the Provincial Emergency Operations Centre. There's coordinated calls every day, not just once a day, it's throughout the day, depending on the situation and the crisis at hand. And that includes members of the Chief and Council, as well as relevant ministries, Indigenous Services Canada for dealing with the First Nation community, our folks here at the Provincial Emergency Operations Centre, as well as field officers who are on the ground. So as we mentioned earlier, we have evacuees in many host cities right now and working very closely with those folks. I was in touch with my federal counterpart for the last week, just letting her know that there may be a request for assistance coming. And you saw that letter go out a couple of days ago, and they responded promptly as well. So that just gives us, under normal situations, it's a 48-hour request. I can tell you last year when we had to request assistance, it did happen much quicker as well. But this is just another tool in the toolbox that if we need that assistance, they're able to come in. But it's a lot of coordination around the table. The Canadian military is also at our operation center here with us and on those calls too. So it's just being able to coordinate so that if we do need to get folks out in a hurry, we're able to, because we have to also remember when you're landing a Hercules in some of these smaller runways, you only have one shot at it because it tears up the runway. So we have to ensure that we're prepared to go if we need to call for that assistance.
Hey, Premier Barbara with QP Briefing. I do want to ask about Stan Show's resignation this morning. He was not the only MPP in cabinet to abuse the expense privilege. There were 11 other cabinet members on this list, including your nephew, Michael Ford. Should they all resign as well, or what other kind of penalty you think would be well suited for them besides paying the expenses back?
Well, as I said yesterday and the day before, it's unacceptable. It's not how we operate. We have to be prudent fiscal managers. Stan did the right thing, and he handed in his resignation as cabinet, and it's just unacceptable. And they're paying back every single penny of it.
But what about the others? The
Again,
others on the list.
I've made it very clear to our entire caucus, it's unacceptable, and we just aren't going to tolerate it.
Hi, Premier Jack Howard from the Trillium. Stan Cho said in his resignation letter that he posted that he only claimed the expense on nights when the legislature sat late. In December 2025, he claimed more than $6,000 under the exemption, but no sitting went past 6:31 p.m. that month. So how do you explain that?
As I mentioned, it's unacceptable. It's not tolerated, and Stan did the right thing.
Will you be taking a look at any other expenses claimed by your caucus, given the abuses of this exemption?
Well, every single person's going to pay back every single penny.
Vashpreet Sahota, the Narwhal. Opposition MPPs are reporting difficulty getting timely information needed to support their constituents. What kind of support do you acknowledge this, and what kind of support are you giving them? Why isn't this a cross-government action?
Yeah, go ahead.
So thank you. I've personally been in touch with several opposition MPPs over the last, we'll say almost week, 72 hours at this point. Certainly welcome giving folks updates if they're looking for them. But I think one thing to remember that's very important is a lot of these folks are the same people that are putting out the misinformation that is contributing to panic, hysteria, and quite frankly, as the Premier had mentioned, this is not the time for that. So if folks want real timely information, want to understand better what's going on from opposition parties, we certainly welcome having those conversations. But what they're doing and what they're perpetrating right now is not helping the situation. So certainly appreciate that. Have had many personal calls over the last little while with some of our opposition MPPs. They're well informed. We've been speaking, of course, with municipalities across the province and also with First Nations leaders, whether that be on national councils or local leaders as well. So there's a lot of information that's getting out there right now, and I think maybe Minister Dunlop wants to just add a quick note to that.
Yeah, I would agree with Minister Harris's statement. I've heard the same thing, and I can let you know that members who have reached out for information have received the information at hand. So again, playing politics is not the time. This is about human safety. We have teams on the ground working to ensure that communities are supported, whether they are staying in place or whether they are being evacuated to host cities. But those members need to reach out and ask for information at that time.
Thanks. And the second question, many families who are being evacuated right now are saying they're going into communities that are already struggling to accommodate them. Emergency response is at overcapacity. Do you acknowledge this, and what support are you giving them?
We're giving them every support we can. My heart breaks for families that actually lose their homes, but everyone's pulling together. I just listed off 10 different cities that are bringing them in and taking care of them, right from Thunder Bay to Kenora to Sioux Lookout, and Niagara Falls is taking care of quite a few people in Toronto, and other areas that aren't as affected as what the north is. Even Sudbury. I talked to Chief Sonny last night from Arrowland, and he evacuated 15 hours on a school bus. Folks, this is a very difficult situation. Even to fly in to these communities on dirt runways when the fire is going and the smoke, our number one priority is to make sure they're safe, and that's what we've accomplished. Again, last year we had over 600,000 hectares on fire. This year, and it's changing on a daily, hourly basis, it's 650,000 acres already. And it's, thank God, no one has died. So that tells me the communities are cooperating. We have outstanding frontline responders. They're doing an incredible job putting their lives on the line. So everyone is pulling together.
Hi, Om Shanbach, the Globe and Mail. The chief of the Collins First Nation says the Ministry of Natural Resources did not respond to requests for help from the community or properly warn people there of the wildfire that destroyed the community. What assistance is your government providing the community, and is your government reviewing its response?
Yeah, as I had said earlier, the Collins fire in particular started very, very close to the community. When we were notified, obviously, the fire had spread closer to community at that point. We did our best to mobilize assets to get them there. That's what we do in any case, whenever we do have fires that are threatening communities. whether they're First Nations or municipalities, other municipalities across the province. The important part to remember about the incident in Collins is that everyone got out safe, and that is the number one priority. We plan, just as we do with any evacuations or any more sort of precedent-setting circumstances, we do look back and we do try and have a little bit of a so-called after-action report, if you will, to see what we can always work better on. But in this certain circumstance, the important part was that people got out safe. There was no loss of life. The smoke in the area made it very, very difficult for our planes to get in. I think it took us almost 2.5 days to actually get a full sort of understanding of what had happened in the area, sort of, we'll just say, around Armstrong, because the smoke plumes were so thick. Like, you could see them from space. Like, that's how big they were. So we'll continue to work with Collins, and again, they're being housed, I believe, in Thunder Bay right now, Minister Dunlop, if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yep. Thank you. We do have an evacuation center set up in Thunder Bay for folks from Collins and Armstrong, which are both unincorporated communities. And we have our Ontario Corps partners who are supporting those efforts. Canadian Red Cross is standing up that evacuation center. Global Medic is supporting that as well. We also have Ontario Corps volunteers from the Thunder Bay and surrounding area who are help supporting those efforts as well. So we're working very closely with the communities. We also have Ontario 211, which is now set up as an information line so that folks who are wanting to know where the evacuation center are, any additional support information they need, they can contact 211 as well.
What is the government doing to provide assistance to those communities?
Well, first of all, we're flying them out. We're providing hotel rooms. We're providing food. We're supplying anything that they need, and they'll be safe. That's our number one priority, is to make sure the elderly, young people, and the whole community is taken care of. And again, moving these amount of people in the middle of an inferno, it's incredible the job that our frontline responders are doing, from everywhere, from the pilots to the engineers to the wildland firefighters. They've done an incredible job, actually, absolutely incredible.
Hi, Premier Siobhan Morris, CTV News. We've seen some U.S. lawmakers the last 24 hours complain about the fire or the smoke from our fires and threaten Canada in a way. Have you had any dialogue with any of the people in the U.S. you have relationships with, trying to set them straight and finding ways that they might be able to help?
Well, two governors I talked to, Governor Healy from Massachusetts called up to see what they can help out on, what they can send. I asked for water bombers. I don't think they have the water bombers available. I asked for firefighters, anything that they can send. Had a really good couple conversations with Governor Walz. As you remember, he came to Toronto. He's a good governor. He called me up and said there's some YMCA campers stuck in the middle of a lake. Those two groups got separated, and with a great work of the OPP and the Canadian Armed Forces, we were able to rescue one. The other one was on a sandbar. We rescued them a couple hours later. He is so, so grateful. And I know the people of Minnesota are battling wildfires as well. As for other elected officials in the U.S., I have to remind the American people, when there was wildfires in California, we had our water bombers on standby. The only reason we couldn't send them because they didn't have the water to get the water bombers filled up. When the hurricanes happened, I think it was last year, down in Georgia, North Carolina, we sent our linemen down there to reconnect. We sent resources, we sent everything. So, a good neighbor, and I truly believe the Americans are good neighbors. If there's some politicians out there chirping away, well, maybe what you should do rather than complain is send support, send help, because we have done the exact same thing for our American friends, and that's what you're supposed to do. So those are my comments.
And back on the subject of MPP expenses, are you now trusting your members to obey the rules as they are, or will you be doing some sort of wholesale review and checking that they are?
Well, again, we're changing that policy, and they know how upset I was, and we're going to move forward and there has to be accountability. And we don't operate that way. That's not in our DNA. So again, we're moving forward. Everyone's paying back every single penny.
Okay, Shauna Hunt, City News. This question is for Minister Harris. We did speak to the Chief of Collins First Nation, and she said that calls went unanswered to the government and the ministry. And it was a CN rail worker who was also a friend who alerted them to a fire saying, it's on your back door, you gotta go. And that is when they evacuated, and really within a matter of minutes of the fire being on top of them. So can you just be more direct in your answer? Did the ministry, did the government in any way alert this community to this fire that burnt their
Yeah,
homes to the ground?
so this is exactly my point, is that we're fighting, I think at the time, somewhere in the neighborhood of 163, I think, fires in the province at that point. It's almost impossible, it is impossible to be everywhere and to see everything. So what had happened is that fire indeed started very, very close to the community. We were all sort of, working in concert, in partnership at the time to see what was going to be possible, how we could get people out. And at the end of the day, the decision was made to evacuate, of course, in boats. I think everybody's seen the pictures that have circulated online.
Self-evacuate.
Yes, self-evacuated, absolutely self-evacuated. There are many communities that self-evacuate. But when a fire is that close and spreads that quickly, it was spreading at a rate of 4 kilometers per hour, which is unheard of when it comes to fires. We have not seen fire behavior like this. I believe the fire started, and I don't want to say don't quote me on this, but I think it was about only 15 kilometers from town. So if you can imagine, from the time the fire was spotted to the time it was essentially on top of everybody, it was only within a couple of hours. So we did our best. Like I said, we're fighting 150, 160, 170 fires at the time across the province. So we'll continue to work with Collins to look at what's going to happen as we move forward in the future. But again, as the Premier said, I've said, as Minister Dunlop have said, public safety is the #1 priority, and we will spare no expense. We will have every conversation that needs to be had as we move forward to deal with these situations. They're very, very difficult situations.
Okay, just a quick follow-up. I know that some evacuees have been flown to Toronto and you said Niagara region. How many people is Toronto taking in? Or how many are here now and how many more are expected?
Yeah, maybe you can give the exact numbers. I don't think we have the numbers broken down. When I talked to Chief Sonny, he evacuated the Sudbury. Again, everyone's filling in where they can, so maybe you might have the exact number.
No, I don't have the exact number in front of me. Toronto has put up their hand and offered to take evacuees. We were looking at the Mississauga area. I think what's important to remember is when we're looking at host cities is the adequate health services in the area, because we want to provide wraparound supports while people are here. So having adequate health care in the area, as well as social service supports as well. So that's the important thing. So when we're looking at some of the communities that people are saying are exhausted right now, it is a lot on the community, but to have those adequate services there are still our primary. So we're looking at some of the northern communities. You said Niagara Falls as well. We have communities coming to us, putting their hand up, offering to help out. Again, doing some investigation. It's very kind, and I thank those communities for doing that, but we want to ensure that adequate care and supports are there for people during that time, because this is not a short-term thing, right? People aren't in for a week and back home again because they don't know what they're going back to. Sometimes it can be several months. We want to ensure that the services are there and those people are supported during that difficult time.
And I just want to mention, the minister, both of them are doing an incredible job. The Ontario Corps, that's where they come into a big play, is after, these wildfires are gone, they'll be in there supporting them on cleanup, on food, on quite a few different areas.
Hi, Premier. Miana for Radio-Canada. We just heard about how quickly and violently these fires spread.
Yes.
We know that climate change is making it worse. Does the government regret getting rid of its climate targets earlier this year?
No, climate's important, and we acknowledge it. You go out there and you hear some people climate deniers. I'm no climate denier, I'll tell you that. I believe in climate change, and we have one of the cleanest grids anywhere in the entire world. here in Ontario. And we're going to continue to achieve our goal of eventually having 100% emissions-free. So, and we're pouring tens of billions of dollars to make that happen. And that's why we're also focused on nuclear energy. It's clean, it's green, zero emissions, it's affordable. And we're pouring tens of billions of dollars to make sure we hit our goal before anyone. But we are leading the world when it comes to emissions. I think we're 90%. The only reason we were at 94, when one of the reactors go down, we have to refurbish it, it drops it a bit. But when it comes back up, and when we get more nuclear capability, capacity, I should say, we'll be leaders in the world, as we are right now, by the way.
This concludes today's press conference.
Yes, Jamie?
Yes, are you or any of your ministers going to go up to the fires?
Yes. Yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're heading up. By the way, Minister Harris just got back from Timmins. He spent a few days up there. Heading back, you're heading back up tonight?
Going to Thunder Bay tonight, yes, sir.
Thunder Bay tonight. No, I'll be up there tomorrow. But I just want to reassure everyone that we will be there for you. We will help you now and after. And we have a great team. We're blessed to have great first responders. But I want to thank everyone, and I just appreciate everyone's cooperation on this. Thank you, and God bless. Thank you, everyone.